what have you changed in your life in the past 90 days? Just using 90 days as a timeline there. I asked the number 2 guy in a multi-billion-dollar division of a company. The division of the company that he was in was multi-billion dollars, like a $3 billion, $5 billion division of this massive company. He was in charge of like 3,000 employees. And I asked him, I said, what's your personal growth plan? What books are you reading? Or what podcasts are you listening to? You know what his response was? I've talked about this story before in some of the episodes previously. I don't have time for that. Man, when I get home, I'm smoked, man. I grab a beer, jump on the couch, watch some TV, and then I go to sleep. How teachable is he? What is going on, EQ gangsters? So today's episode is going to be about how teachable is your organization and what does emotional intelligence have to do with teachability or coachability. So, I do corporate coaching, and it is just interesting to get a sense of how teachable an organization is and what determines how teachable an organization is. How teachable is your organization? How teachable is your family? What determines how teachable your family is? What determines how teachable your organization is? How teachable are you? How teachable are the leaders in your organization, in your company? How teachable for my military folks that plug in, watching this on YouTube, listening on the podcast? How teachable are your commanders? How teachable is your company commander? How teachable are your platoon leaders? How teachable is your battalion commander? How teachable is your battalion sergeant major? How teachable is your company first sergeants? How teachable is your brigade sergeant major? How teachable is your brigade colonel, your brigade commander? How teachable is your division commander? This is interesting, some interesting questions. Is teachability on a scale based on how high up the organization you go? Do you notice a trend in your organization? The higher up you go in the organization, the less teachable the leaders are within your organization. Or is it the opposite? I'm working with a company, a large multi-million-dollar international company, and the CEO is probably, arguably, the most teachable in the entire organization, which is bleeding down to the executives in that organization, which is bleeding down to the individual employees and junior leaders in that organization. So some great questions to think about and reflect on when you have some time. Again, hopefully you have an opportunity to maybe jot down some of the questions that I shared. And I'd love to hear from you too. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think? Like, would you say on a scale from 1 to 10, you can answer those questions. How teachable are you? 10 being you're super teachable, 1, you're not at all. How teachable is your organization? Scale from 1 to 10, how teachable are the leaders within your organization? Have you noticed, or do you notice a trend that the higher up you go, the less teachable they are in your organization on a scale from 1 to 10? So how would you do a quick assessment with those different questions? So again, if you're watching on YouTube, if you see me looking down, I'm looking at my notes, want to make sure I hit all my notes. So, and thank you all for letting me be a part of your own emotional fitness program. For those of you all who are ready willing, and able to take your emotional fitness program to the next level, check out eqgangster.com/mafia. What? So, all right, let's jump into some of this here. I've already asked you a number of these questions here as I'm looking through my notes. If you had to assess how teachable your family is, how would you rate that on a scale from 1 to 10? Your spouse, your children, obviously depending on the age of your kids. So here's what's interesting. I was a part of an organization, I talked about it the last episode, that was very narcissistic because a number of the leaders within the organization are very narcissistic. And what was interesting is, in just assessing that organization on their teachability, they would tell you, oh man, we are so teachable. Oh my goodness, we are probably the most teachable leaders you've ever met in your life. They were teachable as long as it served them and it increased their income individually and collectively. And as long as it served the leaders within that company, they would say they were very teachable. If you talk to we'll say employees in that company, the junior, the junior leaders and employees in that company, we saw a very different level or degree of teachability. I will say that. I'll say it that way. So, and there's probably varying degrees of teachability. What impacts teachability? So, something, regarding, again, I've had some interactions with a number of narcissists, again, within that organization, and individually and collectively. Narcissists and narcissistic organizations will say exactly what they think you want to hear. And you'll be like, oh man, I knew my leaders are teachable. Because look, I just asked them, are you teachable? Of course we're teachable. You see it in politics all the time. They will say whatever they think you want to hear. And most people, that's good enough. Look, I've got a video. I've got it on recording. My leaders said that they are teachable. And so therefore, they are teachable. Hopefully you are smarter than that. Hopefully you pay attention to actions and results and you don't just listen to words. With narcissists and narcissistic organizations, you have to watch the actions. I don't care what a narcissist says. I don't care what their words are. I want to see what they do. One of the things in the Bible it talks about is be fruit inspectors. How good are you at being a fruit inspector? Again, essentially seeing actions, watching actions, observing actions and actual change. So I was with an acquaintance of mine a number of years ago, and we were sitting down at a restaurant, and I asked him, I said, how teachable are you? Are you teachable? And he said, well, of course I'm teachable. And then I asked him, I said, why do you say that? Why do you say you're teachable? He couldn't answer. Well, I read a lot. Does that make somebody teachable? Someone that reads a lot. Now that could be a clue. It could be a clue that they're teachable. But does the reading translate to actual change, transformation, and action? Or does it, hey, now I know more. My knowledge has increased. Does that, again, knowledge, difference between knowledge and wisdom. Wisdom is applied knowledge. Wisdom is knowledge applied. Not knowledge by itself is not wisdom. So, what are, what's the metric of being teachable? What's the metric? Well, for me, again, the KPIs, the key performance indicators, are actual change and actions and transformation. That is proof that an organization or an individual or leader is teachable, is actual actions and change, or actions that lead to change, is again POG, proof of growth. So let me put this in your corner. What have you changed in your life in the past 90 days? A thought, an action, a habit stopped, maybe a new habit started. What have you changed? I just gave you guys a massive proof of growth for me the last episode. My growth in conflict has been almost night and day. Almost night and day. I had just briefly shared, for those of you who have not listened to that last episode, previous conflict, prior to emotional growth, I was completely emotionally hijacked. Now, I don't get emotionally hijacked now when I engage in conflict, which is, y'all, if you only knew how big a deal that is. So for you though, what have you changed in your life in the past 90 days? Just using 90 days as a timeline there. I asked the number 2 guy in a multi-billion-dollar division of a company. The division of the company that he was in was multi-billion dollars, like a $3 billion, $5 billion division of this massive company. He was in charge of like 3,000 employees. And I asked him, I said, what's your personal growth plan? What books are you reading? Or what podcasts are you listening to? You know what his response was? I've talked about this story before in some of the episodes previously. I don't have time for that. Man, when I get home, I'm smoked, man. I grab a beer, jump on the couch, watch some TV, and then I go to sleep. How teachable is he? And again, just because someone reads or listens to podcasts does not guarantee that they are teachable. Now, again, it can be a clue or an insight that they may be teachable. Does that consumption of content and knowledge lead to actual change and transformation? It takes, so here's my argument or my thought is that it takes emotional intelligence in order to change. And I've got some other thoughts on this too, so just hang tight here. So how does emotional intelligence impact teachability? So I have access to, as an emotional intelligent, I'm a certified emotional intelligence practitioner. As a certified emotional intelligence practitioner, I have access to a psychometric, scientific emotional intelligence assessment that I can administer to people and then spend an hour with them to interpret the results of their assessment. And I call it the emotional intelligence before photo, when someone starts their emotional intelligence journey, if you will. 3 things that impact teachability, coachability, willingness to grow and change. Number 1, in this particular assessment that I'm referring to, one of the 5 categories or composites of emotional intelligence is called self-perception. There are 3 subcategories that make up the main category of self-perception, which in my opinion impacts somebody's teachability. 3 areas. Number 1, self-regard. Number 2, self-actualization. And number 3, emotional self-awareness. Self-regard, self-actualization, and self-awareness. Let me define each of these 3 for you. I feel these 3 areas impact somebody's level or degree of teachability. Self-regard is respecting oneself while understanding and accepting one's strengths and weaknesses. Self-regard is often associated with feelings of inner strength and self-confidence. Number 2, self-actualization is the willingness to persistently try to improve oneself and engage in the pursuit of personally relevant and meaningful objectives that lead to a rich and enjoyable life. Self-actualization. Number 3, self-awareness includes recognizing and understanding one's own emotions. This includes the ability to differentiate between subtleties in one's own emotions while understanding the cause of these emotions and the impact they have on one's own thoughts and actions and those of others. So self-perception impacts someone's teachability, and what are the 3 subcategories of the self-perception which impact someone's teachability? Self-regard, self-actualization, and emotional self-awareness. How would you rate yourself on a scale from 1 to 10 in each of those areas based on the definitions that I provided you all? So, which also impacts a mindset that I've shared a couple different times also in previous episodes. Do you have a fixed mindset or growth mindset? Fixed mindset or growth mindset? Which one serves you better, a fixed mindset or a growth mindset? What would be some great exercises? Here's some practical application for you all. List the benefits of a fixed mindset. List the benefits of a growth mindset. What are the benefits? Here's another great exercise to do. What are the barriers to a growth mindset? What are the barriers to being coachable and teachable? What do you think? If I were to ask you right now, what do you think the barriers are to a growth mindset? I came up with a handful myself. Just, again, just as my perspective here. Hubris, pride, ego, insecurity, some of the stories that you have created about what might happen if you grow. And here's something to think about is how do you view change? What are your thoughts and stories around changing, growing, and improving? What are some of those stories, conscious and subconscious stories that you may have developed over the years? How so there's another powerful concept that I won't bring up here. I will introduce it or bring it up. I've talked about it before, but it's another powerful concept that is super important in today's times. Emotional agility. How emotionally agile are you? It takes emotional intelligence and emotional health to be emotionally agile. How emotionally agile are you? Which again, I feel like falls under kind of that teachability, coachability concept there. Another question I love asking people is what are the last, so you say, well, I'm super teachable. So let's go back to back at the top here of these questions again. How teachable is your organization? How teachable are you? A great quote from back in the days, my infantry days, regarding again, this old school quote here. Show me the men and I'll know the leader. Show me the leader and I'll know the men. That was a quote from an infantry colonel, brigade commander way back in the Vietnam days, referring to an infantry brigade. Show me the men and I'll know the leader. Show me the leader and I'll know the men. Show me the teachability and coachability of the leader and I'll know the teachability and coachability of the organization. Show me the teachability and coachability of the organization, and I'll know the coachability and teachability of the leader. So some things to think about, reflect on, and chew on. And how does your level of teachability and coachability impact the organizations and circles that you run in? Because you do have an impact in that. Another question I love asking people, asking leaders, for those of you, oh man, I'm so teachable, I'm super teachable. Who's your mentor? Do you have a mentor? Who are your mentors? What are the last 2 or 3 questions that you've asked your mentor or mentors what have you done with the answers that your mentors or mentor have given you, have shared with you? Have you acted on the thoughts or input that they have provided? In what area or areas of your life are you actively working on changing and growing? Again, how emotionally agile are you? How do you even determine how emotionally agile you are? How do you feel about change? How do you view change? How easy is it for you to change? So anyway, some questions there for you all on that. So again, we're always on the receiving end of everybody's emotional intelligence. Everybody that is in your life is on the receiving end of your emotional intelligence. Unaddressed emotional issues don't get better over time. They actually compound. Emotionally healthy people help heal other people emotionally. Thank you so much for sharing, subscribing, rating, and reviewing the podcast, YouTube channel. Totally appreciate letting us be a part. For those you all ready and willing to take your emotional fitness program to the next level, please visit eqgangster.com/mafia.